Good afternoon, everyone. Welcome back. Sorry it's later than planned, but I was busy, had stuff come up, unforeseen stuff, and now I've got Corona. So you join me in my third bout of Corona. So this could be awful. But we'll start a Ryder Gear. I didn't get to cover that at the time. I'm a bit late now. It's probably old news, but we'll do it anyway. John Ryder. I made no mistake of this before. Said to you guys a lot. I'm a huge John Ryder fan of the fighter and the man. But against Munguia just looked like the fighter in the ascendancy, didn't he? And Ryder looked like the one probably on the way out. Saying that, I'm not sure it would have mattered at what stage of their careers they're at. Munguia's just, he's big, isn't he, for 168. He's a big, big guy, punches hard, fast hands. There was people saying about Munguia that he's very reckless in his attacks and, he leaves himself exposed and makes mistakes with his offense. But I'll take mistakes I'll make mistakes. If they're going to give me 4 knockdowns and stoppage wins, then I'll make the mistakes. I've got no problem with that. So yeah, I thought that was a lot of sort of talk about silly stuff that he makes mistakes. He got 4 knockdowns and he won by a stoppage, so I don't see the problem. Yeah, he's big for 168, Munguia, isn't he? Big puncher. Yeah, Canelo, possibly. Yeah. Munguia is just a good fighter, and he's just a bit of a beast, isn't he? As for John Ryder, when you look at his record now, if you didn't know John Ryder, if you just looked at the record, it's the record of a gatekeeper, isn't it? All the sort of the elite level guys he's fought, he's sort of lost against with the losses on there. And I know he doesn't want to be a gatekeeper. He's not that type of fighter, is he? Other guys are quite happy with that position, aren't they? Derek Chisora was happy with that position. A lot of guys are, but John Ryder's not. Saying that, I mean, if you look at what happened to Smith against Beterbiev, and there was talk of Smith retiring afterwards, and the sort of the talk is the same with John Ryder here. There are fights out there. He doesn't have to carry on being a journeyman, being sort of the gatekeeper, does he? Because as with Callum Smith, after he lost to Beterbiev, there was talk of a yard fight. Now that's neither of those guys are gatekeepers. That's not a gatekeeping type of fight. That's a good, meaningful domestic clash, isn't it? So there can be fights out there for Ryder like that. And if he gets them fights, he might fight on. But yeah, 100%. He's not a guy. He's too proud of a man, too proud of a fighter man to go down as being one of those gatekeepers and the guy who will test our prospects on. So yeah, but wish him all the best, John Ryder. Touching on Anthony Yard, I watched an interview with him on Boxing Social yesterday, and I'm a big Anthony Yard fan. Again, I've made no mistake of that on here, but he talked about a possible fight against Chris Billam-Smith at cruiserweight, and that really appeals to me. I don't know what you guys think, but I think that's a great match. That I'll happily see that. And then he was asked about Bivol and Beterbiev, and he made a good point, and it's hard to disagree. And he said that although Bivol's result against Canelo was great, which it was, Canelo was that much smaller and that much slower. Should it have really been unexpected? And is the name better than the actual? How am I trying to say this? Any win on paper against Canelo, fantastic, and it was fantastic. But should we have really expected anything different? Bivol should have run that all day long, shouldn't he? Considering like the size difference, the speed difference, which is massive between the two. And Yard also went on to talk about how because he'd lost to Beterbiev, and then he'd lost to what's the guy's name? The other Russian guy that he fought early on. You guys are telling me, you know what I mean. But he popped after that fight, and then there was the sort of slight controversy over Beterbiev's raised levels as well. And he said these fights, it's the tiniest margins that win or lose, and if that was the difference on both those occasions, then he's pretty pissed off about it, and rightly so. But yeah. Moving on to Talk Sport, who always provide some good entertainment, don't they? This one's going back a week or so. I saw this late, and this was after the Jonas Michaela Mayer fight. I think this might have been on the Monday afterwards, but I only saw this a couple of days ago. Adam Catterall and Nick Peet. Now, I've got mixed views on those two, especially Nick Peet. Sometimes I wonder what his his, what's the word, sort of his background or his how far his base of knowledge runs, because it sometimes doesn't seem to run very far. And Catterall sometimes I think gets it. Sometimes I think he's still a lot to learn for Catterall. But essentially, they started off by saying how judges, how can 3 judges get it so different, and how bad the judging system is, and it needs a reform, and this, that, and the other. But basically saying about not giving judges a bad name. Now, and the scores don't matter in this case. The analogy is standards are different, but they scored that fight differently. The first on the night when they watched it, I think Catterall was there scoring for TalkSport, but they both scored it different on the night. So on this episode of the TalkSport, like I said, a Monday afterwards, they both gone back and watched it again and scored it again. And when they compared their scores, not only had they both scored it differently the second time, but they've now scored rounds opposite. So rounds they'd scored for either fighter, they've now scored the other way. So now not only have they scored it differently from the first time they scored it, they've now scored it completely differently to each other. So when their whole point was the inconsistency in judging, they just give a finely illustrated example of them two scoring it completely differently again, which I thought was great, because when they both compared their scores from the second viewing and the second scoring, and they both came out completely different, they kind of had a look of, that weren't supposed to come out like that on their faces. Yeah, that was brilliant. I don't know what do you think? I don't know if many of you watch TalkSport Boxing, but if you do, you'll have seen the bits with Nick Pete, and I don't know if he's predominantly covers MMA. That's the sort of impression I get, but I don't know. I just sometimes I look at these guys and I think, what gives you the authority to be up on a sort of a national sports media channel covering sports that, in all quite honestly, you don't really have much knowledge in. But anyway, who knows? Catterall did make a good point, though. This was later on in the week. This is a few days ago, actually. And he talked about Tyson Fury's legacy. And he was saying that Alexander Usyk's legacy, even if he loses to Fury, is guaranteed. Undisputed cruiserweight champion and unified heavyweight champion. Okay, not undisputed, unified, because Fury holds a WBC, obviously. So even if Usyk loses to Fury, his legacy is cemented as an all-time great, we would say, I suppose. Now, if Fury loses to Usyk, what does that do for Fury's legacy? Because then, if you look at, and let's assume Fury's made Fury's, this is the brain fog that comes with COVID, so you have to excuse me. Fury's made no secret of the fact, apparently, that he's not interested in fighting Joshua. So if he lost to Usyk and doesn't fight Joshua, in terms of Fury's standing in the pantheon, does he really have one in the top 10, 15, 20? Because if you're the guy in your era, apparently, and you lost to a guy that came up from cruiserweight, and the other guy that you should have faced to cement a legacy, you didn't fight. What legacy have you really got, essentially? Again, don't know what you think. Let me know. But that was an actual good point by Catterall. I saw an interview with Johnny Nelson on, I think it was Boxing Social yesterday, and he said, oh no, this was a talk show actually with Spencer Oliver. He was filling in for Simon Jordan. But Spencer Oliver asked him about his thoughts on the Usyk Fury fight, to which Johnny Nelson replied, and I don't know whether Johnny Nelson was saying this just for gossip, whatever, but he said that he'd heard rumours that Fury was getting lit up in sparring quite badly and getting turned over in sparring quite badly. And I don't know if you remember, but the same was said in the lead up to the Ngannou fight. Exactly the same things were said, that he was not looking good in sparring, he was looking terrible, he was getting lit up by sparring partners. And then when we got to the Ngannou fight, you totally believed it, because he was awful on the night against Ngannou. Even though he won, he was terrible. Now, if that's the case here, and again, and then there was the rumours about Joe Patai, which apparently not true, but they stem from somewhere. And now Johnny Nelson says apparently he's heard rumours on the inside that Fury's getting lit up in sparring and looking terrible. Is that to be believed? And if it is to be believed, will we see as poor a Fury against Usyk as we did against Ngannou? I, for one, made a video saying that the terrible performance against Ngannou was the best wake-up call to Fury that he could have, and because of that, it's brought him down to earth, and he now knows that he is mortal, and he now will go into that camp 110% focused and put in 110% effort. But if that's the case, and he still can't get it right, who knows? Who knows? Sticking with the Furies, I saw an interview with Big John again this morning on Boxing Social, and they asked him, I can't remember who the interviewer was, I don't know if it was Parsons, I'm not sure, for Boxing Social, but he asked John Fury about Carl Froch's comments, and Carl Froch had talked about, apparently again, Fury's legacy. And was it sort of overhyped considering he had fought, he said he beat Klitschko in a stinker, to which John replied, how can he call that a stinker? Klitschko was unbeaten in so many years, whatever. Well, just because he was unbeaten in so many years doesn't mean that fight wasn't a stinker, because it was. And then he goes on to say about, like, as going on Wilder's last performance, does that devalue from the wins Fury had over Wilder? You know, fair enough question. To which John Fury went on a rant and said, these guys are all, he uses profanity like John does, but basically called them all scumbags, and said that these guys hang around after they've had their careers, they hang around, they're irrelevant, and they just hang on long after their glory has passed. Now, which is quite ironic coming from John, because John never even had a glory years, did he? And John is just a hanger-on, living on the coattails of his son Tyson Fury. You know, John, he talks about the likes of Carl Froch being has-beens and just clinging on to their past former glories to have a career now in the media. And pretty much all John does is exactly that, isn't it? So that was a bit rich coming from John, but, you know, what do you expect from John? I don't know. It's the usual stuff from John, isn't it? Lastly, come out today. I don't know if any of you are aware of this in the UK. Probably the UK, the US viewers will be aware of this podcast. The PBD podcast, the Patrick Bet David podcast, is personally one of my favourite podcasts. I'll barely miss an episode, but today's podcast is an in-depth, at-length talk with Ryan Garcia, and I've seen sort of half of it, and he goes deep on all sorts: De La Hoya, Tank Davis, Mayweather. Goes deep in his career. Like I said, I've only seen half of it, but if you're a fan of long form podcasts, and if you're a fight fan and a boxing fan, that's Ryan Garcia at length. And Patrick Bet David is a wonderful interviewer, and like I said, it's one of my favourite podcasts, bar none. So PBD, Patrick Bet David, but check that out if you want to see that long form with Ryan Garcia. Anyway, that's it. Like I said, I'm struggling with COVID, so if this video was a mess, I totally apologise. I should be back better soon, but I promised you guys a video today, and I didn't want to let you down. I'd let you down on Monday already, so I wanted to put something out. I want to say thank you to all the new subscribers and all the kind comments and all the likes and everything else. Very much appreciated. I'm sorry this wasn't a great video, but I was struggling with the COVID today, but I wanted to get something out and just say a thank you to all you guys. So that's it. I'll see you all soon.